David Gergen is the director of the Center for Public Leadership.
Good morning, and I think I'm going to stand if I can. My wonky knee doesn't give in. I want to join in thanking all of you for coming to this special day. We at the Center for Public Leadership are privileged to host you for this event and to partner with Ken Blanchard and Associates for this, and Ken and his team, working with Donna Calico and whom you just heard from, and Andy Selecki, have done an absolutely marvelous job of pulling us together, thinking through what we might talk about today, and inviting all of you here. And I must tell you that we've long looked forward to this conversation, and we think it comes at an appropriate moment because we're right in the midst of the most exciting campaign that I think most of us can remember. Certainly the most exciting in all the time that I've been involved in. This is my 10th presidential election, if you can believe that, and I'm having a hard time believing it myself. But nonetheless, I cannot remember a time that has been more riveting, not only here in the United States, but very strikingly in other nations. I see Rosabeth Kanter, who's here, who travels as I do and all over the world, and she and I have talked about this, but I was just in Toronto, and the Canadians were just really wanted to have a serious conversation about this. But it was one of the things I've learned about this election already. There's a couple of things about it that I think we ought to take some pride in, even as we look today toward having serious conversations about how tough the next presidency is going to be. We can take pride in a couple of things. One is, Canadians said, I've heard this in Europe as well, that as much as they've rued some of the things they've seen about America in recent years, that they've seen aspects of America that they did not particularly like, they really envied how robust our politics were, and thought, wouldn't it be wonderful if they had this kind of political campaign in their own homes? And so in that sense, they were very excited, and they looked to us and said, this reminds us of what we like about America. That gave me some heart. It's also true that overseas, and indeed here, there is a sense that whatever else you may think about this campaign, and the way the voters winnowed down the field turned out to be very wise, and to leave us choices essentially between the first former prisoner of war hero, the first African American, or the first woman as president. Has been something that people are celebrating around the world. And I would argue that whoever wins or loses in the Democratic race, we've now broken barriers so that we have validated the idea that an African American or a woman, or both, can now be president. We didn't start the campaign with that belief. And indeed, we're still not sure how gender and race are going to play out through the remaining weeks and months, but there's no question that we have broken that barrier. And finally, there has been a sense about this campaign that the apathy that we described, or we ascribed for so long to the younger generation, has been broken. They have really shown how much of a myth that was for so many of the young. And this actually started before this campaign began. We have seen on one campus after another this growth of idealism, this concern for social change, a sense of commitment to bringing change that has been expressed by so many in the social entrepreneurship movement, by these various volunteer organizations, whether it's City Year here in Boston or Teach for America, so many of these organizations in which people are lining up to enlist. This last spring, when Teach for America closed its books on its applications, 5% or more of the senior class applied to teach in tough urban schools from 96 different colleges and universities across the country. 96 different colleges and universities. 10% or more of the graduating class applied from 20 different campuses around the country. These are people who are giving up jobs at Goldman Sachs in order to teach in tough urban schools. And they illustrate this outburst of concern and commitment that we're now seeing in the elections. And I think one of the issues for us as a nation is, how do you capture that? How do you channel that into long-term social change? So there is much about this election already that for which I think a lot of us feel we can be grateful. But we also sense that, as exciting as this race is, what the hard work really begins after the elections. And that's our concern today, to begin focusing on what is coming. The candidates, and I must say the press, I'll be interested in hearing Joe Klein responds to this, but for the most part, the candidates and the press have not yet fully told us, what's ahead, how tough this is going to be. I cannot remember a time when I thought of any incoming president facing a tougher agenda, a more daunting set of challenges than the ones facing the next president. Indeed, I would argue you have to go all the way back to Franklin Roosevelt in March of 1933 to find a time when an incoming president would be facing tougher challenges. They were more obvious then. They are more above the waterline. These are more below the waterline, but these are more complex. They're very resistant to change. They're very international in character in many instances, and they will not be easy. So what we'd like to do today is to have a conversation that starts with what's ahead. Substantively, what's on the agenda of the next president, and let's have a candid conversation among ourselves about what's ahead. Then we're going to move on to talking about what are the qualities, what are the attributes one would ideally like to see in the next president. And then we'd like to talk about questions about leadership. What questions should be put to these candidates? What questions should we be formulating in our own minds that ought to be put to the candidates on their leadership? We've heard a lot from them, whether on aspects of policy, but we haven't had much of a conversation about what is central to a number of the people in this room, and is that it? How do you lead? From my point of view, I must tell you, I'm a little less interested on who's going to win, although that matters a lot, obviously. But I'm very interested in the question: can the winner govern? Can the winner lead? Because given what we face, it's extraordinarily important to the country, and I would argue that indeed to the world, that the next president be a very effective, indeed an extraordinary leader. And that we need to press hard on what aspects, what qualities, and what questions surround that. And that is going to be the thrust of our conversations today. And as I look around, I see many here who are leadership scholars, leadership practitioners. Many of you come from the corporate sector. Some come from politics itself, some from the press, some from universities. But what I see most, and there are a lot of students here, by the way, and we welcome especially the Zuckerman fellows who are here, these are students who are getting joint degrees. They either go to a law, business, or medical school, and they come to a public service school at Harvard, Kennedy, education, or public health to get a joint or concurrent degree. And we celebrate these students. They're really first rate, and you'll have a chance to meet them. They're there at your tables in many instances. You'll have a chance to hear more from students as the day goes on. We wanted to make sure that student voices were in this, because we, as here who are privileged to teach, I must tell you, every day we learn something from these students. Mm-hmm. So it's important for us to have them here as part of this. So, but as I look around and see so much diversity, what I also sense is a common concern about the future, a common sense. Joe Klein wrote in the lead package in Time Magazine this week. You'll see he has a lead piece there. They have a big cover story on, and the winner is, with an asterisk by the winner, with a major picture of a very smiling Barack Obama. And Joe Klein's piece concludes that at the end of the day, after all of the shouting and everything like that, there was a sense that voters were moving in that direction and toward McCain, because they felt that the country was in a ditch. I think that was the phrase you used, in a ditch. And that's what we're going to talk about today. How big is the ditch? What's in the ditch? How deep is it? How wide is it? And what should we do about it? Those are the issues that are in front of us today. So thank you, Donna. I'll pass this back to you and to others, and let's get going with our hero. Ken, good, terrific. This is Ken Blanchard, and we welcome him here as a co-partner and a co-conspirator. Ken, thank you very, very much. Ken Blanchard has forgotten more about leadership than I remember. So Ken, thank you.
Thank you.
Very good to have you.
I appreciate you, David, talking about McCain kind of as a prisoner of war rather than a geezer, because I remember when I turned 65 a couple of years ago, I was talking to Zig Ziglar on the phone, and I said, Ziggy, you're going to retire, because I had received an invitation to the 59th anniversary of his 21st birthday. And he said, there's no mention of it in the Bible, except for, a couple of people, nobody under 80 made an impact. So he said, I'm refiring. And so I think there's some great refirers here. We got some great young people here. One of the exciting things about today is the diversity of the people here. And I think with a common heart that you're talking about, David, of concern about leadership and what can be done by the next president, because it is a challenge. And my colleagues and I and our company are just thrilled to be co-sponsoring this with David and Donna and Warren Bennis and all the good folks at the center and all the wonderful things that they have done. I guess the big reason I was excited about this is a few years ago, 14 of us in our company got together and decided to write a book that we titled Leading at a Higher Level, because we just felt that there was a desperate need around the world for a different leadership model. And we kind of defined leading at a higher level as helping people accomplish worthwhile goals while taking into consideration the needs and concerns of all involved. And I think that's really what today is all about. I think if we raise this above politics and say we're really here to say if we had anything to do with helping the next president, how can we help them lead at a higher level and really kind of make a difference? And so that's why I'm here. I'm interested in how we can help the next president lead at a higher level. What I'd like you to do is introduce yourselves at each of the tables and say who you are, and then tell the people at the table, why did you give a day up here? I mean, this is some very busy people. I don't think there's anybody in here that throws their time around very liberally. So tell the people at your table who you are and why did you choose to come here, and then we'll get underway. So if we could do that at your tables.
Thanks.
All of you here. And I must tell you that we've long looked forward to this conversation, and we think it comes at an appropriate moment because we're right in the midst of the most exciting campaign that I think most of us can remember. Certainly the most exciting in all the time that I've been involved in. This is my 10th presidential election, if you can believe that, and I'm having a hard time believing it myself. But nonetheless, I cannot remember a time that has been more riveting, not only here in the United States, but very strikingly in other nations. I see Rosabeth Kanter, who's here, who travels as I do and all over the world, and she and I have talked about this, but I was just in Toronto, and to partner with the Ken Blanchard and Associates for this, and Ken and his team, working with Donna Calico and whom you just heard from, and Andy Selecki, have done an absolutely marvelous job of pulling us together, thinking through what we might talk about today, and inviting all. Take a look. Good morning, and I think I'm going to stand if I can. My wonky knee doesn't give in. I want to join in thanking all of you for coming to this special day. We at the Center for Public Leadership are privileged to host you for this event.
David Gergen is the director of the Center for Public Leadership.